love lives here.
Great. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Reverend Caroline Flanders. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Reverend Caroline is a resident of the Inland Empire, and she's a frequent visitor to our Riverside Center for Spiritual Living. Behind the scenes, Reverend Caroline has a full-time ministry as a board-certified chaplain. Some of you may recognize her from serving both Riverside Community Hospital and Kaiser Fontana. Most recently, she has served as Director of Support Care Services at a local hospice, and Riverside has been the home for several of her grief support groups as well as her memorial ceremonies. Reverend Caroline brings a heart of public service, of compassion to her ministry, supporting the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. Reverend Caroline recently was ordained by the Center for Spiritual Living. She serves home office as a chaplain on the Chaplain Committee, Auxiliary Review Committee, and the Ethics Committee. She is extremely delighted to join us today. And she knows that this is the place where love is alive and all the people thrive. So please help me give a warm welcome to Reverend Caroline Flanders.
Thank you, Constance. Like your hair is on fire, right?
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It is truly such a pleasure to be here with you again. If I haven't met you before, I'm happy to meet you now. Thank you so much. I always love to acknowledge the unification that we have with the greater Centers for Spiritual Living. You know, there's over 400 centers, teaching chapters, and other spiritual groups just like this that are either meeting today or at some point in time during the week, and we are part of all of that. And so this month, the Centers for Spiritual Living is focusing on the theme of community. And today, Reverend Jeffrey told me that the focus is on longing to belong. Longing to belong. Now, sometimes when I'm preparing to give a Sunday talk at one of our local centers, I'll, put some tunes on in the background. I love to listen to classic tunes like from the 80s and 90s, if you want to call it classic. And I love classic reggae. And I was just focusing on, what am I going to talk about this Sunday? And I'm hearing Gregory Isaacs in the background just crooning about pining for the love of the one that got away. The one that got away, and how we long and pine for those meaningful relationships in our life. Sometimes we feel downright lonely. And so as a healthcare chaplain, and someone who's a student of psychology, it made me think of loneliness. Now, loneliness, really, one way to define that is that it's an unpleasant emotional response to a perceived isolation. The key word here is perceived isolation, right? But in my studies, I've come to learn that loneliness, being lonely, is actually a public health crisis. Did you realize that? I mean, even before COVID, even before so many of us were forced into isolation, there was literally a pandemic of loneliness. In my research for today's talk, I came across over 350,000 peer-reviewed studies on loneliness. So what does that tell us? It just tells us that this is a universal feeling that so many of us come across in our lifetime. Sometimes it's because we feel insecure about ourselves, right? We have anxiety. We feel like we don't belong. We feel like we're not good enough. Sometimes we feel lonely if we've endured a loss, maybe a partner, a romantic partner, a friendship, whatever that might be. Sometimes it's because we're in a new situation, maybe a new job or a new hobby group that we've joined, and we feel like we're on the fringes, like we don't quite belong yet. It feels lonely. A lot of times that's because of a lack of intimacy in those relationships, the perception that there's not any closeness, that we're not intimate with one another. But, loneliness has real consequences, too. Not only, are those emotions, those unpleasant feelings that come with loneliness, that pining, that longing, but people who feel lonely sometimes don't take good care of themselves. They neglect to care for themselves, to love themselves. And we all know that kind of stress and that kind of lifestyle can lead to physical ailments, right? As a chaplain, I've come to learn that one distinct way of determining whether someone has spiritual well-being or they're experiencing spiritual distress is by asking about their relations. Who do they have in their life? Who do they feel that they belong to? Where do they connect? Belonging. As a human being, we all want to be part of something, don't we? We all want to feel like we belong. And there's a difference between loneliness and sometimes wanting solitude. Sometimes we really do want to be alone. And taking that time out for ourselves can be very rejuvenating. It can feel peaceful. It can just make us really feel even more connected, not only to the people in our lives because now we're rested and we're feeling better about things, but just because we realize that we are part of the whole. And that's a lot different. Solitude is a lot different from looking and feeling lonely, which is draining, which can be very upsetting, and it can actually be very distracting. Even in a committed relationship, sometimes we can feel alone, right? Even if we're part of a large group, sometimes it's easy to feel like we're not part of that group. We're on the outside. People want to be seen. They want to be recognized, and they want to be heard. So what I've come to learn is, for my own spiritual practice and my own personal practice, is that if you want to have a friend, you need to be a friend, right? If you want to feel love, then you need to give love and be love. I love the way that Jesus Christ said it in the Christian Bible when he said, "Whatsoever you do for the least of my brothers, so you do unto me." So what that says to me is that whatever I do, however I show up, however I love myself and love the other, I am also loving the divine. It's really common whenever I walk into a center for spiritual living, you probably do it here too, is you hear people saying namaste. Has anybody here ever heard that? All right, namaste. Or maybe you're a student of yoga. Maybe yoga is part of your spiritual practice, and it's very common, the hands in the prayer position and a slight nod, and we say namaste. But how many times do we actually stop and remember what that one greeting means? When I say namaste to you, Constance, I am saying the divine in me recognizes and honors the divine in you. I would love to hear you say that with me. I'll say it one time and then I'll ask you to repeat it. The divine in me recognizes and honors the divine in you. One more time. The divine in me recognizes and honors the divine in you. I'm just going to invite you to turn to someone in the room and just say namaste. And to our friends online, namaste. Because the divine in me does recognize and honor the divine in you. What if instead of saying, as it's been known to say, every man for himself, we said every man for one another? What if that was our mindset? There's a lot of ways that we connect, and today there's still Many people who are feeling isolated because of COVID, because they need to protect themselves. And so we connect in other ways, right? A lot of times it's on social media. The only platform that I really go on when I have time is Facebook. And you notice when something happens in someone's life, you see post after post after post acknowledging what's going on, right? So today I want to share with you one of my Facebook friends, Guillermo Mash, died suddenly. He had a heart attack, and after several days in the intensive care unit, his family had to take him off of life support. Guillermo Mash, I call him Bill. It's a very special man. I first met him about 10 years ago. This is a man who lived up in Chico, California, and in 2012, he started a nonprofit that he called Without a Roof. And their sole purpose, their mission, is to tangibly help the destitute by giving them a face and a voice. That was Bill's mission in life. And he did that. He would go on the streets, and there wasn't a person that he did not get to know by name, and listening to their story and understanding why they were where they were. Bill knew everyone in Chico. I came across Bill because about 10 years ago, there was someone very close to me who was living a homeless experience. And I was so deeply worried, so heart-wrenchingly afraid for him. And I noticed that he had a connection to Bill on Facebook. And I noticed that Bill was doing all this good work in the community. He knew where people could go for a warm meal. He knew where people could go for shelter if they were sleeping on a bench with newspapers for cover. He knew where people could go for help, and he was always there to help them. So I reached out to Bill, and Bill already knew my friend. He already knew him by name. And Bill ministered to me and gave me peace of mind to know that my dear one was safe, that he was protected, and that all of his needs were met, that there was no need to be afraid because God, the goodness of the divine, was already present. And maybe, just maybe, God was present through someone like Bill. So this week, I saw an outpouring of story after story after story of people who were touched by Guillermo Mash and his nonprofit Without a Roof. The goodness of the divine, G-O-D, God, will provide for your every need, including those people, those connections that will lift you up and fill your life with love and with meaning and with purpose. Remember, loneliness is a perception. It is a perception. It is not the truth of who we are. In Science of Mind and Spirit, what we know and we believe is that the essence of goodness lies within every sentient being. Every sentient being. We know and we believe that we, each and every one of us, are a part of that, and we can never, ever be separated from its goodness. Because of who we are, because of the sacred nature of our being and our connection to that divinity, we should never feel alone. We should never feel isolated. Solitude may just be a gift that day. Yes, there are life events that will conjure up feelings that aren't like goodness, that might bring up deep sadness, even depression, that might make us feel like we are completely and utterly defenseless and alone. Yes, there are challenges and events that can take a toll on our emotional and psychological well-being. But let's not get stuck there. Let us always remember that the one presence, the one life, the one truth, the one goodness of the divine is always there walking beside us. Our work in this world is to remember that, to seek it out, and to see it in others. Our work in the world is to nurture oneness and to lift up those who are feeling separate from their good. That's why we're here. Now, not everybody can be a Bill Mash. Not everyone is like Guillermo, walking the streets, meeting people where they're at, learning their story. Sometimes that's all that it takes. Some people have other missions for good in the world. Maybe, you collect food at a food bank. Maybe you're part of a group that supports social justice issues. There are so many different ways that we can be the cause of unity, of healing, of bringing people together. So many ways. Each and every one of us must find it within ourselves to know what is yours to do. That is your calling. Each and every one of us right now in this moment of time, right now, your work is to feel, sense, and know the divinity that resides within you. And then own it. Own it. Live it. When you walk out of these doors, show it. Then and only then will you be able to feel it within your own life experience, no matter what the circumstances are. In the Christian Bible, precisely in the Gospel of Matthew, there's a section where Jesus Christ is speaking to a large, massive group of people. They call it the Sermon on the Mount. Maybe you've heard of it. And in the Sermon of the Mount, Jesus Christ gives the supreme blessing. I love that, supreme blessing of what we know as the Beatitudes. Now, I like to think of that word beatitude as the attitude of how to be, right? The attitude of how to be. Now, I'm not going to read all of the Beatitudes to you, but I do want to share a piece of it with you. Jesus gave this blessing to us when he said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are each and every one of you." Always remember these powerful words. We, you, me, us, we are the light of the world. And your calling is to shine your light before all, that they may see the goodness within you, and that they will see that you do give all glory to the goodness of the divine. It's inside of you, right here and right now. Let's pray. And so as I turn within and I recognize that there is only one life, one power, one presence, I call it the goodness of the divine. And what I know to be absolutely true is that that goodness resides within myself and within the heart of each and every person in this room, each and every person in this planet. It resides in Guillermo Mash and within all of those ones who are out in the world making a difference, shining their light before all. And so I know and I affirm that each of us in solitude can feel and sense and know the stillness of the voice that whispers and tells us and informs us what is mine to do. As I know we sit today together in community, in unity, we are recharging our batteries and allowing ourselves to be directed and guided to know how to make a difference in the world. And what a blessing that is. What a blessing it is to come together, to recognize this goodness, to go forth and to be that light in the world, to shine the peace of unity on all. And so giving thanks, I just simply lift my word up into the one mind that I know is God. I call it forth into being, and we affirm it all together by saying, and so it is. Amen. And namaste. Thank you.
Love